Call to order the regular Building Board of Appeals meeting for November 16, 2023. Roll call.
Paul Darling.
Here.
David Arnsdorf. Hugh Flatt.
Here.
Robert Hart.
Here.
Kevin Cox.
Here.
Staff, we have Mike Lemieux.
Here.
Fire Marshal Redmond.
Here.
Myself, Deborah Williams. Roll call is complete, and we do have a forum.
Thank you. First item on the agenda is approval of minutes from the August 17, 2023 meeting. Is there any comments on those minutes? Now, can we get a motion?
Motion to approve. Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Minutes are approved. The first item on the agenda for new business is BBA 23005, a variance for 311 East Liberty Street, Ann Arbor, Michigan. And so the process will be, we'll have the applicant come up and present their appeal, summary of that for 5 or so minutes, and then first we'll have a staff report, and then we'll have the applicant come up and then present their appeal, and then the board will have questions for the applicant. And then we'll have a motion by the board and then a vote on it.
Please make sure to speak into the mics, please.
So can we have the staff report for this variance, please?
Yeah. So the building at 311 East Liberty, it's 5B construction. The first floor is formerly mercantile, and it's proposed to be a B occupancy. The 2015 Michigan Building Code, and is indicated in signed sealed plan submitted with the permit application BLDG 23-0198. The plan also indicates the suites above are to be B occupancies. This property was given relief from accessibility requirements 512.2 and 512.4 of the barrier-free design requirements, in which essentially stated that the recessed areas on the first floor and interior access to the second floor did not need to be accessible. In February 18th of 1987, the Barrier-Free Design Board required a platform lift be installed to comply with their order. To date, the platform lift has not been installed. The building permit application was submitted for a ramp on the east side of the building. The building's approximately 7 feet 2 inches from the property, which is reduced to 5 foot 1 inch for about 15 feet. The petitioner is currently requesting relief from section 1027.5 of the 2015 Michigan Building Code. Staff recommends this application be denied as it doesn't meet the standards for approval. The code has not been misinterpreted. The provisions of the code do apply, and not maintaining separation minimums is not equivalent or better than the requirements of the 2015 Michigan Building Code. Per section 1027.5 of the Michigan Building Code, staff recommends the appeal be denied and the order from the Barrier-Free Design Board in 1987 be complied with. The applicant should resubmit a plan that provides access and meets the minimum requirements of code.
Thank you. So can we have the applicant come up and present their request? Please state your name too for the record and sign in there.
Yep, I will. Okay, my name is Carl Huter. I am the architect of record on the project. First of all, I thank you all for being here today. I know you have busy schedules, and more importantly, I thank those of you on the board. You do an important service to the city of Ann Arbor. I don't believe in the 40-some years I've been an architect, I've come in front of this board more than 5 times, because someone entering this room, coming in front of this board, is asking for a variance on a law, a code section, and it should be done when there's absolutely no other way of compliance. So the burden of proof falls entirely upon the owner of this property. And in that proof, We must demonstrate a practical difficulty and hardship that's not self-imposed. And we also need to show that we're meeting the intent of the code section in our solution such that the life safety elements of that code are protected and the public is protected. And I take this very seriously. 311 East Liberty was purchased by Vahan Basmasian in the 1970s. And in 1987, his tailoring business grew to a point that he added on to the property. And that time, the architects, design architect involved, House and Black and Associates, applied for an exemption from the Michigan Barrier Free Code because they found that the practical difficulties and hardship indicated it was technically infeasible to give exterior ingress and egress into the building. And they went in front of the Michigan Bureau of Construction Code's Barrier Free Division and received an exemption. The work proceeded, they received a permit, and the work was approved. In 1997, another building permit was pulled on this property, where again they renovated the first floor and opened the basement area up to a mercantile use. And at that point in time, no barrier-free obligations were applied for or granted on this property, and that renovation occurred and was approved based on the 1987 exemption. We are not looking for a barrier-free exemption on this property. We want to comply with the barrier-free codes to provide ingress and egress to the property, as well as bathrooms, proper-sized doors, corridors, et cetera, inside the building. The first item I handed out for reference is, it took me several months to get this out of the Bureau of Construction Codes in Michigan. But because this is a change of use and a level 2 renovation under the 2015 Rehabilitation Code, the exemption that was granted in 1987 is null and void. So any reference to the 87 exemption is more of a historical fact, and the fact that on 2 occasions this property was looked upon as having a practical difficulty and hardship. It was technically infeasible to provide access to the facility during those 2 events. Sometime between the 1970s and 1997, the Basmasian family acquired the property at 315 East Liberty, and so they own both these properties, which will be part of this petition in the context of it. 311 and 315 are also part of the East Liberty Historic District. And as we all understand, the Ann Arbor Historic District Commission takes their job and responsibility on very seriously. And in doing so, it's very seldom, if ever, they grant an exemption to do something to the facade of a building in a historic district. They have very limited actions they take on side yards, and mostly any renovations or additions that occur on the backs of the buildings. As part of the HABS, the Historic American Building Survey requirements, they look at a historic district not only as the facades in the district, but also the spaces between the buildings, because the context of a historic district is made up of the buildings and the space between, because it demonstrates a character and a fabric to the time and place that the historic district wants to be preserved to. And that's very important, that the space between the buildings is as important as the buildings themselves in a historic district. I received this commission in early 2023, and it came from another architectural firm that no longer could work on it. And at that time, they'd set a ramp up in their design on the rear of the building, and you see that in the drawings, documentations that I gave you. We applied for a building permit in April of 2023, and in that application and the design, we are seeking to put in a barrier-free ramp, allow that access, and that ramp, because the new tenant for the space is an A3 restaurant under the B business use, and there's day-to-day needs for Gordon's Foods and things like that to run up the ramp to bring supplies into the building and back. So it's serving 2 purposes. It's our barrier-free access, and it's also a rampway to provide service entry. We're also improving all the fire safety on this first floor, and all the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing improvements are going to be upgraded to current standards. as well as providing the rampway, barrier-free bathrooms, and all the compliance inside. It's a level 2 renovation under the 2015 Michigan, under the Rehabilitation Code. In the packet I gave you, there's an entire page on technical and feasibility. And if you read the Rehabilitation Code, it demonstrates in there that if you have a historic structure, and it's a level 1 or level 2 renovation, that if it's technically infeasible to comply with the barrier-free code, you're exempt. Again, this is just reference material. We're not asking for an exemption. We can comply if we can get the variance on the 1027.5 issue. So it is clear that this little 44 by 60-foot piece of property, where the building, at the greatest distance the building to the property line is 9 feet, in order to comply with 1027.5, we need 14 feet, which does not exist on our site, to put an exterior exitway in and then have the 10 feet of setback that 1027.5 is requiring, and then to the property line. It just physically doesn't exist. So we have a practical difficulty and hardship. It's technically infeasible to provide that 10 feet. Now to the intent. I have read more and more about this. I'm searching online and whatnot, and it appears to me that the intent at 1027.5 is that in an emergency, be it a fire or someone's injured or hurt, that fire, emergency services, and/or law enforcement has visual access to that exitway, and they physically can move from this 10-foot setback area onto that rampway or sidewalk and save someone's life. We need to protect that person's life. We need to see they're in danger, and we need to go and rescue them. Very important. And so the unique characteristic about this site is that 311, 315 are part of this historic district. There is a driveway on 315, a 10-foot wide driveway that runs from the street to the back parking area shared by 311 and 315. There is another driveway that's on the west side of 315. On the east side of 315, there's another driveway that is mostly on the 321 property, and it's a shared driveway between 315 and 321, although there's no executed shared agreement for that. So the only means of vehicular entry into the 315 parking area wholly on the 315 site is this 10-foot driveway. So we have a 10-foot driveway. We have a historic district that doesn't allow any major tampering of the clear space between the buildings. We have a rampway that's totally constructed out of non-combustible steel materials. The east building wall of 311, we're going to bring up to conformance of section 705.5, which I've also included in the packet in front of you, which states that if you have a setback of less than 10 feet, if you upgrade the building wall, that brings compliance to it. So in front of you, and there are 2 rampways proposed in front of you, but it's clear and obvious that the rear rampway that I was originally tasked to work to does not comply with 1027.5 in any such way, including the intent. But placing the ramp on the east side of the building, I have 10 feet of clear space formed by the driveway. That has to be there. We have the unique condition that's in a historic district, and that space is preserved. Increasing the fire rating on the sidewall, the non-combustible nature of the rampway, I believe that we're showing that we're showing the practical difficulty and hardship, and we're showing that we're trying to provide all the protections that 1027.5 require, just in a unique manner, as most variances should demonstrate. I'm here for any questions if you have them. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions on the board for the applicant?
Yeah. So, Carl.
Yes.
The thing you just gave out this before the meeting, if The 1987 determination is null and void, but in the background, it's talking about barrier-free design requirements for the, I guess, access to the first floor and recessed areas of the first floor. But then they're also talking about interior access to the second floor. Right. Oh,
Is this on? I think
No, it's
red.
off.
Oh, I gotta hit the button maybe?
Push the button.
oh, is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, to restate. Is the issue here just access to the first floor? Because the background description talks about access to the second floor with a lift. So are we just talking about the first floor access?
I am tasked with rehabilitating the first floor of the building, and I'm trying to bring that area of the building up to compliance.
Hey, Carl,
Yes?
in the exemption
You
was,
you need to tell them who you are.
so I'm Ken Jacobson, the property owner's son-in-law. In that exemption from the 80s, which is exempt, it talks about the lift for access to the first floor, and there was exemption for access to the second floor, and an exemption to a recessed floor for a display case on the first floor. That's what was in the exemption, which is void.
Because the change in use. avoids
Yes,
that.
correct.
Well, it's time, yeah, because of the changes in the code. Is that what you said, Paul?
Oh, change in use.
Change of use.
The change in use from
Okay.
mercantile to business, I think voids that
Yes.
exemption.
And access to the second floor is only by the stairway on the west side of the building?
There's an interior access.
Oh, there's also interior?
Yes.
Okay.
And what's the use of the second floor? Is that going to be business or is
It's
that-
vacant right now, so it has been a hair salon, and we're in the process actually of trying to plan out what we're going to be doing with the whole building. The building we have next door is a mix of commercial on the first floor and an apartment. That was the second and third floor. We're evaluating what we're going to do. The tenant actually broke her lease and left us with a pretty high uncollectible receivable. And the basement is my father-in-law's shop. And so the intent is he's going to go back in there, and we're doing a clearance sale, and then being 78? No, 87? Yes, I always reverse this too. But being 87, he's intending to retire this coming year, and then that will go to another mercantile.
Okay.
It's the intent.
So I have a question about the driveway on the east side. Is that an alleyway or is that on the adjacent property that you own?
The driveway is on 315, and it runs right along the east property line of 311.
And you have a right to use that? There's a right to use that driveway? Access across that driveway for the people getting in and out of the building?
He owns both
Okay.
both
So you could give
properties.
yourself a right-of-way easement,
Correct.
that it won't be blocked?
Correct.
Yeah, yeah.
What if it's sold in the future? And,
You'd have to have some kind of right-of-way easement they'd have to set up before we, to allow access there, but.
I mean, I think the historic district, the preference was in the back.
I have to tell you, just from what I've seen of the building, that I kind of feel the same way, because the east ramp is going to be exposed to traffic
Correct.
coming in and out, so somebody could presumably hit that ramp. The other thing is the ramp blocks off access to all the gas meters that are on the side of the building, so I don't know how you get in there and do any of that servicing or reading without climbing.
On the east side?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So we're providing bollards along the side of the ramp, so vehicles can't crash into it. And the meter space, in my conversation with Detroit Edison, they said, as long as there's a clear way at the end of the ramp along to the side of the building, which we're providing, they can access those meters to read them. They also have remote readers, and they can stand a certain distance away and read them also.
what about servicing? What about servicing of the meters? I'm pretty sure there's a code about 3-foot access, even if fire department has to get access to them to shut off.
Yeah, there is, for fire code, there's 36-inch clearance.
Okay, so we would need to relocate the meters in order to
Comply with
satisfy
that,
that.
yeah.
Okay.
And that's if that option's preferred. The nice thing about the back, just for you to take into consideration, is we have a problem in the back right now with homeless people that are setting up tents and stuff. The intent is to actually upgrade that space so that would provide a deck. The ramp would connect to a deck, so it'd also be a seating area for the store.
Tenants.
Yeah. And that also would be helpful because it would, right now, it's just a vacant alleyway and a little hidden spot. And by upgrading that, we can kind of maintain the property. We recently had to report to the police because they're peeing on the front door every night, and they're setting up tents in the back.
What is the 301 East for Liberty? What is that wall? Is that a fire-rated wall with no openings in it?
Yes, the 301 is on the west side of 311 and the north side. And it's a 7 or 9 stories, I can't remember. It's a brick white and concrete block wall, and 301 is totally suppressed, and that has no fenestration in it at all. It's a 0 lot line, no window elevation.
Because it does seem like, the intent of that part of the code is that, if you have 2 buildings on the same lot, they'd have no openings between for fire protection. So at least the 301 and is fire protected from the ramp in your building because it's no openings, probably a 2 or 3 hour rated wall. So just curious of what that assembly there was. There wasn't openings.
It's a 4 hour rated wall on the
on
301.
the 2 other sides, yeah. Any other questions from the board? So will you have to go back to the state for a different exemption to reuse the second floor, depending on the use then? We have to go back to the state for some other type of,
I mean, depending on what we decide to do with that, we're
Yeah.
gonna end up having to do whatever we
Yeah.
have to do where the intent is to actually bring everything up to current building codes and stuff. I mean, there was water damage last winter, and because of that, we started to open up some of the walls and the more we do, the more things we find. So we found out, like, because it was built in the early 1900s, there are no cross ties in the attic. So we're looking at, like, reinforcing the structure of the building as part of fixing things up. Because right now, the roof is literally pushing down. So we need to reinforce everything moving forward. And, we have to look at cost benefits of everything to figure out what we're going to do as far as use and stuff.
And access to the first floor, if you're handicapped, would be using that ramp, either exit or entrance.
Yeah.
And there's no real way to get to the second floor at this point, because there's no elevator, I'm thinking.
Yeah, no, there's no elevator. It was built in the 1900s.
But there are 2 stairs, an
Right.
exterior stair and an interior stair that go to the second floor.
Yeah.
Right.
There's 3 stairs, but yeah. There are 2 stairs accessible from the first floor.
so this is going to be the means of egress, and ingress and egress for this barrier-free. What's the outside lighting on that space? Is there more lighting proposed for that on the
Right,
outside
we're
walls?
placing lighting all along that to provide the 1-foot candle along the means of egress out to the street.
All the way out to the street?
Yes.
Is there anything the fire department will need to have outside? Because I know sometimes you guys have strobes. How do you know to go in the back? Or if or have access back there?
There's nothing that I know of code that would require for any type of horns or strobes. That's actually, and usually if that's on the outside, that's to signify if there's an alarm system for a fire going off or for a FDC connection. But other than that, for us, in response, if we're looking for the building, there's always a 360 done. So most buildings, not every building's going to have 2 forms of egress or ingress, but it's just
You go to the Knox box and you go.
if they have a Knox box and then
Sure.
just going around the building. And I mean, if they have to, if there's a locked door, they force entry
do
if
that.
need be, so.
What about barrier-free design? Is there going to be Do they need to have signage outside saying barrier-free entrances and?
I think typically they would have to have the same, if it's not the main entrance, it would be signage directing to where.
Go
the-
around directions.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more about the two options of the ramp on the backside? One is like a prefabricated aluminum ramp and one is wood frame? Is that correct?
No, they're both, the rear ramp is a prefabricated aluminum ramp, and the east ramp is
Stick built?
bespoke. No, it's all steel construction.
Okay.
There's no wood on it at all. I wanted to make sure it was non-combustible in both cases. No, I'll amend that. The back ramp comes off a deck that is built out of wood. So
So there's a piece of it that is combustible, I
That's
guess, 'cause
correct,
the deck
yes.
is combustible, but not the route itself.
And the back ramp, once you exit it, that leaves you with the driveway?
yeah, you're exiting out of
And
the
the
driveway.
driveway right now is gravel, I think?
Correct.
Is that an accessible route? I don't know if that counts as an accessible.
So but there's, sorry, the driveway is gravel, but there's a sidewalk that's
Okay.
along the side of the
Part of
building.
that, a piece of it,
Yes.
part of it's, what is it, concrete or whatever?
Yeah.
And then, so your side ramp isn't going to interfere with the sidewalk? The sidewalk will still be available?
It'll
The
take over
east
the
ramp
sidewalk.
is going to go over the sidewalk.
The rear, though.
The rear ramp comes out to the sidewalk, and then you take the sidewalk to the street.
Or into
Or
the
the
parking
driveway.
lot.
And it looked like there was no windows in the back of the house. You were filling those up for the bathroom, so the ramp is basically separated by fire rated assembly for both sides.
Correct.
What's your deck material made out of?
The deck is wood.
It's
Treated
wood?
treated lumber, yep.
Would this still have to go to the Historic District Commission for their review? If this got approved, would that have to go back to them for their approval of whatever you propose in here?
We've received approval on both rampways.
Okay, okay. Any comments? Want to make a motion?
I'm having a hard time with the wood deck burning in the case of a fire.
I mean, you could frame it out of light gauge metal. I don't know what the decking material would be, but you could use metal framing for the structural.
And maybe composite, I don't know
That still
the
probably would
factor
burn.
on Composite though.
You could be fire retardant treated lumber.
I mean, if we're
along
going
with
with the
those outside.
aluminum ramp, why don't you just carry that
You could use aluminum.
building
Yeah, I mean,
material straight to it?
potentially.
I'm hearing we want a non-combustible deck.
Kind of what I'm thinking.
Yeah, yeah. There was a section in the section 102.1027.5, and the last one about, similar to being other buildings on the same lot, that the walls and openings are protected in accordance with the 705 fire separation distance. So I think what they're providing there with no openings on either side of the ramp would be potentially equivalent to that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I agree with
if
that.
that's 1 hour, whatever time for opening there, so. As far as a equivalency, A motion? Any other questions?
I have no more questions.
I'll make the motion, but it's going to be with favoring the back
I agree.
ramp.
I agree.
Yeah, okay. Okay. I move that in the case of BVA 23-0005, the appeal of the building official's decision that the work proposed at 311 East Liberty granted relief from Section 1027.5 of the 2015 Michigan Building Code, and the Building Board of Appeal reverses the building official's decision for the reason that the applicant has proposed an equal or better form of construction. Stipulations are that the accessible ramp and means of egress for the first floor be located on the rear or north of the 311 building, with the provision that this condition is acceptable as long as the adjacent 301 existing building with 4-hour exterior wall rating remain, and that the existing 311 Liberty building adjoining wall to the ramp retain its 1-hour rating, and that the deck be constructed of non-combustible material. The approval of this appeal shall not be considered as a precedent for future projects incurring similar conditions.
Okay, thank you. Any comments on the motion? I think it suggests a voluntary amendment to have some type of right-of-way agreement from the end of that ramp out to the street, because if it's a means of egress, that we don't want to make sure that ramp continues to the right-of-way. Wherever the other sidewalk is, because right now the adjacent property, if there are two different properties, we're discharging to a adjacent property.
Hey, Carl, isn't that sidewalk already part of that building?
Support that amendment?
I think they're looking up
Okay.
Yeah,
Who
I think
owns the
that easement,
sidewalk?
I think it's part of that same property the sidewalk is, so I think that easement's already,
Already there?
I think so.
The ramp is going to go to the sidewalk, and then the sidewalk
They're talking about this area.
runs down on the 311 property to the street.
Right, it's already the 311 property.
Okay. And the ramp stops before the end of the, it looks like the ramp is going almost right out to where the
That
property line was.
that was on the east, when we were talking about on the side, the east side of the building, not
Okay.
the rear, is where we
Okay.
were having that
Okay,
discussion.
so you have a path to the right-of-way all the way out there.
Correct.
Correct.
So no friendly amendment needed then?
It doesn't sound like it.
Doesn't sound like
I guess we can make it a provision that is in there so that whatever they do have right-of-way. I guess that's required by the building code no matter what. They're out to the right-of-way, so that we wouldn't have to make that part of the motion. So,
So in other words, like, someone couldn't build an addition on that side of the building because you need to maintain
Right.
access.
Yeah, yeah.
That makes sense.
any other questions or comments on the motion from the board? No. Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone against? No, the motion passes.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your consideration.
So the board secretary will write this up, and you'll get something in a month or so? Is that what we typically do?
Hopefully less.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, gentlemen, thank you. Have a good day.
Enjoy retirement.
Thank you. Paul, if I could, there were a couple of things missed on the agenda. There was no public commentary, there were no people online, And the approval of agenda, I'm assuming that we'll go with the same people that approved the minutes, if that's okay with the board?
Okay, yes.
Thank you.
So is there any old business? Let's see, from the board or anyone in the audience for old business? Any other communication for the board?
I have a building official question. Glenn, any updates on when the new code might be adopted? The BBA is getting restless and nervous.
Haven't heard any updates from the state on when they're going to make it.
Also, weren't we supposed to get an update about the generator
On,
installation on?
not the Wall Street or whatever, where the development there is.
1100 Boardwalk.
Boardwalk, yeah.
So
yeah.
the project was delayed. They're back to the original plan with the permanent generator
Okay.
hooked up.
So they wouldn't need the variance. They're
Yeah,
basically-
so they
Yeah.
basically are to a point where they
Yeah.
wouldn't be requesting occupancy
Yeah.
without what was already approved on the original plans.
Okay.
Does that mean they didn't get the generator yet?
Oh, no, they have it, it's hooked up.
Oh, it is?
They're in
Oh,
testing
oh,
now.
oh.
They have the permanent one in place.
Okay.
Yeah,
Just other construction things from preventing from occupancy, other things.
yeah, correct, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Anything else? Your motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Those in favor? Second. Those in favor?
Aye.
It's passed. We're adjourned at 2:09. Thank you.